we have a no pyro rule. We don't do pyro. We did it.
Metallica has taught us something.
Is there a story behind that?
There must be a story here. Okay.
Now, I like Nickleback. I think they make great records. I have nothing against them. But we did an outdoor show, and Nickleback went on. It was us, Stone Temple Pilots, and Nickleback. Nickleback went on in the middle of the afternoon. Sunny California days, 90 degrees out. And they've got the pyro going off. And it's like...
Oh my gosh!
Are they using pyro in the middle of the afternoon? People are like suntanning. And Billy says, "We're never going to use pyro. It's not for us."
Did you guys know that Billy Idol knows more about American history than probably anyone that you know?
Spoiler alert.
Well, spoiler alert, the people over there in Britain, as Richard Shaw has clearly defined, are much more learned in general. I'll say it. America, we're getting dumber. And if you don't want to be part of that, then first off, turn off this show, because there's nothing you're going to learn from this that nitrous oxide can't provide for you.
Isn't that sad, though, to think that someone from Britain would know more about American history than most Americans know?
I mean, I guess it depends if it's Lemmy Kilminster sitting in like a full Nazi uniform, like by himself right above the rainbow.
Well, anyway, nonetheless, fun facts about rock stars, things that you're going to find out in this episode. So shall we introduce ourselves?
Sure, why not?
I'm Benny Goodman, but I'm here with my lovely partner in crime, as well as the voice of reason, Siobhán Cronin.
So I am the sole partner in crime, but hi. Hey, everyone.
Well, no, Cory's not my partner in crime. Cory would turn me in, like, without a doubt. Like, he's not my partner. He'd be like, I don't know that guy.
Even for a very small reward.
But with that said, like I've always said, with that said, Cory Peza, the guy that plays bass, turns some knobs, and comes after Siobhán Cronin.
Just glad to be here, man.
Perfect lineup there. But so here we are for episode 2 with Steve Stevens. And if you haven't checked out episode 1, go listen to it. A lot of interesting tidbits in there.
He might step into some poop.
Yeah. So we don't want to give too many spoiler alerts since Benny doesn't have a filter.
But if you've ever thought about Billy Idol, you don't think of a person. You think of this character. And Steve Stevens knows the person.
I think of a snarl. He could be an emoji. Like, if anyone could be an emoji, Billy... Actually, Steve Stevens could
be an emoji.
Well,
everybody.
Well, if you guys go to the beginning of this episode, go onto YouTube, because we actually have Paul Lorenzo, our drummer from Lost Symphony, our band, LostSymphony.com, drew a picture of Steve Stevens, and I sent it to Steve. And the problem with it, in the first place, and Steve loved the first picture we sent, but it didn't have a ray gun. And I could tell how pissed off Paul was. He was like, why wouldn't you tell me that from the start? And I'm like, I didn't think of it, bro. Like, I was hanging out with my friend Heath, and he said, listen, man, Steve Stevens has a ray gun. You can't have a picture of Steve Stevens as a cartoon without a ray gun. So I sent that to Steve, and Steve writes back to me, both my wife and I really, really like this picture. And at first he's like, I have thick skin, when he said he would do it. I'm like, dude, this is not meant to be a joke. Like, you are a fucking cartoon. Like, if there ever was one. In the greatest way. Like, literally, his hair's perfect. He's always has sunglasses on. He's got his lip pierced. He looks exactly the same as the White Wedding video. Identical. So if you want to say Steve Stevens, if that's an insult, then it's an insult. But for me, I hope one day to look as good as the left side of your fucking sunglasses.
I have to say, I'm mostly amazed by the fact that he can play an insane, like, flamenco guitar solo while smoking a cigarette, like, without dropping it. It's just like multitasking to the extreme.
No, this is definitely one of our more rock and roll episodes. Stories about we got Michael Jackson, Billy Idol, Top Gun.
Stepping in poop
in a good way.
Oddly enough,
sometimes you just do it and good things happen.
So here we are, part 2 with Steve Stevens.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 2020, where up is down and left is right, and sometimes flamenco is actually rock and roll. I like to introduce my dais first, because Siobhán was so excited last episode. She didn't even introduce us before the guest, which is usually what you do, because you have like the drum roll or whatever, because we have a guest way above our pay grade. Actually, you can get this guest on Cameo to say whatever you want them to say. And I recommend you doing that, because if there's any way to make your day, I would love, just all of my friends that are listening, I would love for you to hire our guest. But I'm not going to get to him yet because I'm not rude like Siobhán. I'm going to say
I
Siobhán
was so
Cronin.
excited. I've been hanging
Siobhán
out with
Cronin.
Steve Stevens on YouTube the last 5 days. So
Well, I know
thank
you have.
Hi, I'm Siobhán Cronin.
And then we have Cory Peza, who's back from Hawaii, who got 2020 before he left, and 2020 now because he's been up for like 39 hours straight.
Poor Cory.
Yeah, I'm alive. We're good.
And, ladies and gentlemen, found on Cameo, literally the soundtrack to HBO for at least 2 decades, and the man behind Billy Idol, played on Dirty Diana, and has the coolest hair probably in rock and roll. And sunglasses because the sun never sets on a player.
That's right, yes.
Fucking Steve, motherfucking Billy Idol, shred your face off like Carlos Montoya Stevens.
All right. What an intro.
That was a true Benny.
You can
Goodman
hire me
intro.
on Cameo.
Wow,
He was
awesome.
pretty, yeah.
Awesome, man.
If you're not awake at 5
I want to
a.m.
wake up to that as my alarm.
No
Yeah,
coffee
it'll
required.
it'll get the blood pumping there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is why you need a limiter on your mic. Hopefully it's on today.
It is on my
Okay.
thanks.
So Steve, thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, sure, my
the
pleasure.
last episode, if you guys haven't checked it out, go listen. This is the real deal. This is rock and roll history stories as well as some pretty good advice for musicians and people in general that are in the creative field. What are some of the biggest moments for you in like your touring history? What moments stand out to you as something that you always kind of cherish or hold in high esteem?
Or maybe you just thought it was surreal. You're like, I cannot believe that I just won a Grammy for the
Right.
stepping in poop.
Stepping in poop. Obviously, playing Madison Square Garden, I got the opportunity to play with Billy there, and then also with Michael Jackson. And as a kid growing up, I used to camp out for shows when I was 13. You get your Ticketron ticket, and
Who are you camping out for?
I camped out for Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the Who, and I was, like I said, I was a big English fan, so those were.
Well, that makes sense with the Palmer thing because I feel like your guitar playing is almost like the way he plays piano. It's like
Right.
if he was to play your guitar through your fingers, that would be.
Keith Emerson was such a big influence on me. Now, here's the crazy thing. In the middle section of Rebel Yell, there's the breakdown where Billy goes, "I walk the ward for you, babe, or 1,000 miles for you."
I've done karaoke, Steve. I know it.
You know that? Okay. So that behind it, there's a melody that plays halfway through, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and people think it's a keyboard. It's not. It's my guitar replicating the keyboard. The Mini Moog solo in Lucky Man was the inspiration for that, and I wanted to get that same sort of fluid, linear sound, and Keith Emerson was a big influence on me. I always tell people, I tell guitar players, take your influences from outside of your own instrument. Listen to other instruments to get, because you'll find stuff that'll give you a unique slant. If you're just replicating your favorite, it's great to have your favorite guitar players, but you don't want to be a clone and just play like them. So listening to classical or jazz and all this other stuff and other instruments and finding a way to interpret it is a great way to find your own voice.
It's great.
Oh, that is such great advice.
Yeah.
And that's a funny story because we just did a cover tune, a couple weeks ago, and I did with my electric violin. I put it through a Kemper and got like an electric guitar sound, and people watched the video and they were like,
She
"Where's
played
the
John.
violin?"
Give some background. She played Jakey Lee's part on "Bark at the Moon,"
Awesome.
and she played the harmony to the solo flawlessly. But people were like,
They were mad.
"Where's the where's
They
the
thought I was like
violin?"
faking the violin.
and I think they were listening for organic violin, and she was literally playing through Kemper. And I realized that there was a learning there's a learning curve because people didn't realize what they were hearing.
Right.
'Cause I'm going to tell you, we actually were messing around with Rebel Yell because we've been doing some quarantine jams before we even knew we were going to talk to you. I thought that was a keyboard part.
Yeah, it's not.
And I learned it on the keyboards.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because Joey, the guitar player we're playing with, who's Joey Concepcion, is literally like a savant level player. He's I always say his hands are like on a Ouija board because if we did a cover of Van Halen, and you can't play Van Halen unless you could do it justice, and I don't do it. No one I know does it justice.
Right.
Joey's literally yes, no, goodbye, ain't talking about love.
Right.
But I had no idea that was a guitar part. And I got to tell you, you talk a lot about your tone and using lots of effects. I would have never known that. What made you decide really to take on the effects so much and try to camouflage your guitar playing in that way?
Well, this was the 80s, and there was nothing against keyboards, but if I didn't come up with it, there was going to be a keyboard part on the record to do it.
Sure, yeah.
So and I wanted us to be guitar based. I really wanted to, and also my love of experimental guitar players. There's Billy actually turned me on to Susie and the Banshees, right? I didn't know anything about it. And he said, "Oh, you ever check them out?" And he kind of grew up with Susie. She's from Bromley, where he's from in England. And I started to listen to these records. There was a guitar player who's passed away named John McGee, and he was very cool with his effects. And he was kind of like a good influence on what we were doing. And the same with, Andy Summers with the Police, using the delays and the things that he was doing at the early 80s, that I kind of thought, if I don't do it, if I don't come up with it, there's going to be some, guy with a, Jupiter 8 just playing chords. And I was like, let's at least try the guitar idea.
Yeah, I mean, if you can confuse people, why not? That's being edgy, right?
Siobhán, can we play a game? I've been thinking about this, because like in Pink Floyd, you can't have your pudding if you don't eat your meat. But I feel like with the episode 1, we ate the meat, so now it's time for the pudding. So Cory, tell me what you think of this idea. I know that Siobhán. So Steve, you may not be aware of this, but Siobhán's actually played with a lot of incredible players like yourself. And I was thinking maybe we could play a game where we list off players and you give us like an awesome story of what it's like to work with a personality of that caliber. And obviously, since it's ladies first, I'm going to start off with Andrea Bocelli. Andrea Bocelli, is that how you say it? Am I fired?
Andrea Bocelli.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What's it like to work with him? Any good story?
Honestly, not a great story.
Did he walk
He's
into
just
a
like
wall?
a super nice guy. No, he did not walk into a wall. Just like, I don't know, some people you walk in and they just have such superstar power that they just like command an entire, I think the most amazing thing with any major artist is when they can just walk into a space or a concert hall and just like command the attention of thousands of people. It's something that's like beyond music. It's personality. It's your background. It's your experiences. It's like, you don't even understand how somebody can have that much, I don't know, that's that much of a presence.
Okay, Sebastian Bach. That's for you, Steve.
Oh, for me?
No, you worked with Sebastian Bach. Sorry, I meant Steve Stevens.
I thought Siobhán worked with him.
I have the Johann Sebastian Bach.
Different Bach.
I work with
different
all
Bach.
the time.
He's, I love the fact that he is exactly in real life how he is. The guy is a rock star. He's larger than life. He's a handful.
6'4".
He's a damn handful, but he is such a fan of music, and I mean, obviously, he's a huge Kiss fan to begin with.
He has frozen Gene Simmons blood in his freezer. That's a different level, man.
Here's the thing about him: he has never lost his enthusiasm or his attitude about music and rock and roll that he had probably when he was 10 or 11 years old as a kid.
It's incredible.
Doing the Kiss thing. And I really like Sebastian. I know that he can say some things sometimes that maybe rub people the wrong way. He's very opinionated, and but he's very real. He's not a bullshitter, and I love people like that. Even if they say something I don't agree with or whatever, at least you know what you're dealing with.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
So Siobhán, this is for you.
He's a hell of a singer.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
and still has that voice.
Literally. So you say that, and I agree. I consider him up. Like the Freddie Mercury of like heavy like music from that time. Like him. Like a lot of people say Axl Rose as well. Like all those guys. But for me, like I remember hearing that live album that they'd done, Skid Row had done, and he's just singing something. He's just holding it out like
So
and the
smooth.
power. I mean, look, I love Iron Maiden, like Bruce Dickinson has, but there's a finesse that, certainly in his prime, that Sebastian Bach, there was none better. There was different. There was, other opinions. It's obviously music is subjective as a whole, but for me, there was none technically better than that guy.
I'll tell you what a short little Sebastian story. Show you how a good guy he is. Yeah. So I asked him to do. I was invited to do this gig in New York at. I forgot originally it was Les Paul's club where he
Iridium or something.
That's right, the Iridium. Originally it was Fat Tuesdays. He did his thing, and then they kept it. So Les Paul passed away, and they continued to do this this show. I got invited, and after Les passed away, they'd invite guest guitar players to curate it and play. And so I said I'll come in and do it. It was with their band. So I invite Sebastian. I said, I'm going to go do this thing at the Iridium in New York. Would you like to come and get? Oh, sure, man. We'll go do, we'll have fun. Okay. We get there. First of all, the place is tiny, teeny tiny. And I didn't realize it was dinner theater, meaning everyone's seated and they're eating dinner while you're playing. Now that's a different experience for a musician.
Yeah, that's like something I would have been hired at.
It's not rock and roll, right? So right. I find this out because this place set, I'm doing the sound check. Sebastian's not there yet, and I'm going, what's with the place settings? They go, people, they eat dinner while they watch you. They eat dinner? I go, wow, and it's 2 shows a night, so that's a different thing. So Sebastian shows up. I go, listen, buddy, thank you so much for doing this. I got to tell you something. This is dinner theater. He goes, what do you mean dinner theater? I go, they're going to be eating dinner. Well, dinner? What are you talking about? What that fucking dinner? So we get up there, and he's such a good sport. We get up and we do like the first song or something, and he walks across the table and picks up somebody's drumstick. Goes, how's the chicken? Starts eating it in the middle of the song, and he just was a great sport about it. Played with the whole thing, and it was. A lot of other people could have been very pissed off about that, like, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah. In the defense of the Iridium, they have really good chicken wings.
Do they? I don't
know. I made that up. I don't know. Oh, wait, hold on. Now it's back to Siobhán. Siobhán, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh, wow.
Earth, Wind, and Fire. That was a short stint. That was something that I did as like a symphony thing. So I didn't really get to, work with them that closely. And I was going to say
during September?
I think it was in the summer because it was one of those outdoor festival type things. It was definitely like during festival season. But that's a funny thing, as a string player, some of the experiences you have with major artists is so peripheral, which is kind of why I like the band that I'm in right now, because, talking about the writing process or collaborating, it feels so much more meaningful when you're not just like the hired person on the side, as great as it is to learn from other, major artists. Like, It's definitely cool when you get to really have personal interactions with people.
Agreed.
So with them, I really didn't get to interact very closely, unfortunately.
Yeah. I got called to do, early on, I got called to do a session. I never did really many sessions or whatever. I'm not a great sight reader or anything, but I got called to do a session for Diana Ross. And this was after I'd done Michael Jackson, so they obviously thought, oh, let's get that guy,
Right.
I show up at the studio, and I remember when I spoke to when Quincy Jones called me to do Michael Jackson. I said, I'm willing to do it. Agreed to do it. I said, under one condition, that Michael's there. And he goes, well, of course he's going to be there. It's his record. Why wouldn't he be? I said, okay.
Well, you never know. You're right. I mean.
So I went in, and Diana Ross was nowhere to be seen. I think she was in another country at the time. And I said, where's Miss Ross? Oh, Miss Ross. And I just was like, this is not. For me, it's not, I'm not that guy. I'm not the session guy. So.
Right.
Right. Well, so you mentioned, though, now that we brought it up, let's go back since we didn't cover it in the first episode. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with Michael Jackson and how that came about and, the story behind that?
Oh, and I have to ask, I'm going to dovetail on that.
Don't
first.
There's
one thing I want to...
Write it down and come back.
All right, I will write it. I did write it down.
Okay, go ahead, Ben.
Well, no, I was just going to say that you worked with Michael Jackson, but that I had read somewhere that, you didn't know what to ask for money. And then when you talked to Eddie Van Halen, he didn't ask for any money either. Do you think this is to add on to it, do you think that's setting a precedent for guitar players? Like, should you have gotten paid money from Michael Jackson, the really rich guy? But this is off of what Siobhán was saying. Sorry.
Well,
Before I lost it.
Okay.
You can come back to that.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about your experience first.
This
Whatever
is
you'd
how I
like to talk
2020
about.
him.
So at the time, I had just been signed to Warner Brothers, and Ted Templeman, the producer of Van Halen, was my A&R guy. And I guess the story I got from Ted was that Quincy called Ted. This is the follow-up record to, Beat It and all that. And so now they're working on the Bad album, and they've got a rock track, and they need a guitar player. And Quincy calls Ted. Who should we get? Ted says, "You got to get Steve Stevens." He's, Ted and I had struck up a friendship at that point. I'm signed to Warner Brothers. Quincy calls me. I'm living in New York, and I had a late night, and I thought my friends were playing a joke on me. Like, yeah, sure. And he said, no, don't hang up because I won't call back. But Ted Templeman gave me a number. I go, oh, okay. So I had, the way that I always worked with Idol was that it was myself, Billy, and Keith, our producer in the studio, and no entourage, and an engineer. No entourage. We pretty small little tight unit. And I'm thinking, oh wow, I got to fly out to do this Michael Jackson thing. There's going to be a huge entourage. It's gonna, I'm not prepared for that. This is a whole different thing for me. I don't, it's a different world. So I get to the studio, Westlake, and I open the studio door, and it's just Michael, Quincy, and an engineer. Exactly the same way I was used to working. And I said, oh, this is great, because I was expecting the whole shebang. And they said, no, man, we're just in here making a record. That's it, And a great experience. Quincy was obviously the father figure then. You could tell that they had a close bond. It was all about the music, and Michael loved, I do this kind of ray gun guitar effect thing, and Michael was into sci-fi and all that. And once I started to do that, he was like, oh, that's the coolest thing ever.
And then he probably pulled out his real ray gun.
But here's one thing. So I do the solo, and I'm finished. We do the track, get that, and then they say, okay, now do what you want to do on it. So I come back in the control room. This is the days before guitar players were actually in the control room. Mm-hmm. I come back in and I go, how's that? And everybody goes, that's great. And Michael goes, oh, I really like the high notes. I go, the high notes. Okay, cool. Kind of remember this, right?
Yeah.
So then we do the video, and that was a whole different thing. And I've told this story. We pull up. Now it's the time for the entourage. Now I get the real Michael Jackson experience. 100 of people in. We pull up, and there's a van outside with like swings and toys and all this. I go, wow, they've even allocated a spot for the people's kids to do. No, it's Bubbles the Chimp van. It's his van.
Oh my God.
That is the ultimate rock star moment.
So I go in, and we're doing the thing, and he goes, you want to meet Bubbles? Oh, that's why I'm here. I'm here. Right. So they bring Bubbles out. There's somebody holding Bubbles, and they're spraying him with Elizabeth Taylor's Passion perfume. Right. So it's a little weird, right? And I get to meet Bubbles, and it's like the whole thing. All right. So when I got together with Eddie Van Halen soon after doing this, I go, hey man, I worked with Michael Jackson. He goes, oh man, cool. I go, yeah, I'm on the rock track. I go, it's a great opportunity. He goes, hey man, did he say he liked the high notes? So that was,
good.
I go, yeah.
Wow.
Both of us are like, what does that mean? We play a lot of high notes.
Yeah.
Wow.
But,
so after that, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So that's my Michael Jackson experience.
I was just going to ask, so after that, to what extent were you performing with him? Because you mentioned earlier that you'd played, a show with him, or, how much did you perform with him? I
did one show with him. It was a benefit in New York for the NAACP. And so his manager at the time was a guy named Frank DeLeo, who was like supposedly a connected guy, heavyweight dude. Italian. Don't mess with him. Old school.
Mafia.
Everyone.
Michael's nice, but I'll come over with some cement shoes, Steve.
Right.
Everybody is in fear of this guy, right? Now, I'm going to play Madison Square Garden with Michael Jackson. All my family wants to come. My mom, my dad,
Of course.
my
Oh my
uncles,
gosh.
my cousins. Like, this is the big time, right? I'm like, so I call the office and they said, I said, I need some tickets. And they go, sold out. Show's sold out. I go, oh, shit, what am I going to do? And I go, sold out. And they go, every ticket is spoken for. But I'll ask Frank, okay? I go, oh, man. I get this message. Frank says, come up to the hotel. He's staying at the Plaza Hotel. I go,
Oh, boy.
I got to go. I got to kiss the ring, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I go up there. I said, hello, Mr. DeLeo. Nice to meet you. I said, I have about 6 family members that would love to see the show. He goes, here's what I'll do. I'll put in an extra row of seats for your family. And,
Wow.
and literally put seats
added.
in. The nicest guy.
Unexpected. Yeah.
The
Well, I mean, I'm
dude-
sure if you're friends with him, he's the nicest guy.
Exactly.
Like, be on that guy's good side. He's like, I will add an extra row at Madison Square Garden for the
Right.
Stevens.
Yeah, it's like the when you hear about the John Gotti. Oh, he threw the best parties. yeah. But yeah, it was cool to me. That's all I know.
Wow. And what was it like playing that show?
I show up at the sound check and it's just me and my guitar and there's no Michael and there's a very flamboyant guy comes out and he's the choreographer.
Of course. Yeah.
And he says, now during the solo, you're going to chase Michael up on the rafter. I go, I don't chase. I'm not. I go, there's my wah-wah pedal. That's kind of where I'll be. Right. If you need me, I'm going to be around this vicinity. I go,
Right.
I don't chase. I don't run. It's like, oh, but and I go, I'm not that guy. I go, really, I'm not that guy. Choreograph. I go, I'm rock and roll. I play Billy Idol. We don't choreograph anything.
Right.
And he said, okay. And it turned out fine, but the backstage was very different than, at a rock and roll show, it's, in the 80s, you can imagine what backstage
Oh,
was.
sure, yeah,
Well, this
yeah.
backstage
No, I
was,
can't imagine. I can't imagine. Tell us all about it, Steve.
Oh, well, it was, booze and babes and drugs and,
But was that true? Because, I feel like we're so removed from it now because, here's
Well,
the thing.
rock and roll isn't like that anymore.
You know,
Now
she-
it's gyms and protein
Well,
shakes
that's what I'm
and
saying,
like
'cause you're-
Netflix.
So, Steve, you think it's redundant, right?
Starbucks.
So I feel like I'm 38. I just turned 38. I'm at that age where I feel like I'm the last generation to really understand and maybe see the end throngs of that. But now, you see these Netflix specials of Motley Crue, and that's what people they don't know. They literally don't know what happened, and then you see the Def Leppard story. They got fluffed underneath the stage. Did this shit happen, man?
Yeah. The thing was, it was so accepted. I mean, the person that had the best coke was always the head of not the head, but somebody at the record label.
Yeah.
You'd be at a meeting and people would, in a boardroom and people would just put out lines.
That's how they got stuff done, Steve.
Well, we did. We didn't
Watch The Wizard of Oz. Did you see Judy Garland?
There was no
She was fucked as hell on that shit.
we didn't know about rehab or the thing was the record what we later learned was the record company wanted to keep you as screwed up as possible, so you weren't aware of how much of your money they were taking.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They
Yeah.
They 2020'd you by giving you the best coke.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, yeah, man, here, just sign this thing,
Yeah, that's
and we'll
right.
just take care of all your money and just keep doing the cocaine. It's
you
fine.
know
It's
how
fish
many-
scale. You're great. You're fine.
It's no joke, man. That's totally true. So Michael Jackson's dressing backstage was not like that. It's Liza Minnelli and Donald Trump and all
Donald
these-
Trump was back there
Yes.
with Liza Minnelli.
Yes, with Liza Minnelli. Not together.
Wow.
He was with what was his first wife's name?
Ivanka.
Oh, Ivana.
Ivana.
No, that's his daughter.
Yeah. No, Ivanka is the
Ivan-
daughter.
I get them confused. They're
Right.
basically the
Ivana
same
is the
anyway.
wife.
He's with
yeah.
Ivana. who else is there? Liza Minnelli, Willem Dafoe. It's all these kind of like New York
Oh my God.
actors, and it's a different scene, man.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So speaking of New York, so you at a certain point you moved to LA, obviously totally different vibe. What prompted your move from New York to LA?
Well, there was a period of time after we did Whiplash Smile, I was signed to Warner Brothers, and Billy made the decision to move to California. I wanted to stay in New York. So we didn't work together for a couple of years. And then I got a call, although we stayed friends and stayed in touch, and there was never a falling out or any kind of bullshit like that. So, and then he called me and said, "Hey, I'm working on a new record. What do you think about coming back to work with me?" And I came out to LA, and he had a home studio, and nobody had home studios in New York. I mean, you
can't even fit yourself in New York.
Yeah, you can't even afford a parking spot.
Maybe Terry Bozzio will let you borrow his drum set, and you can set up a studio in there when he's not there on the Tuesdays and Thursdays.
New York wouldn't have worked well for Terry. So I come out, and we start to work together. And his first record company, Chrysalis, had folded, and I started to get. At first, I was staying in a hotel. Then I went to a residential hotel. Then I said, you know what? I kind of like being out here. I can have a studio. A lot of my friends who were out in LA, who had moved out to LA, there was more. It just seemed like I'd met the GNR guys and Duff McKagan, and it just seemed to be a good little scene happening to make music, and people were doing it in their homes rather than losing money in recording studios. So I just thought this was a good environment, good health. I needed a change of play. New York was. I was spending a little bit too much time in the subterranean world of New York.
Yeah. So you're a fan of LA now?
It's changed a lot. My wife and I actually, up until COVID hit, were looking to move somewhere. And I don't know. I don't know if I belong in LA anymore. We live Sunset Plaza, and it's nothing but hotels that have come up here, and all of the mom and pop restaurants in my neighborhood are gone. It's now Wahlburgers and all this, and
gone Holly weird.
Yeah, it's just it's changed a lot, and I don't go hang out in clubs and stuff like that. We're either we're on the road when we can be, or we're home doing very normal stuff. So
right. Yeah. Well, speaking of your wife, you not to change gears, but you were on reality television, obviously. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, the TV show. That was like, or how that came up.
When I had nothing but good things to say about it. It wasn't scripted, and it actually came about because the producers came to a Camp Freddy show, as you had mentioned, and they saw all of us musicians hanging together. Billy Duffy from The Cult, who I've known since the '87. We were all friends, and they said, it'd be cool to do this, series with you guys. And we said, it was more centered on our wives. And I was on the road, so I could be involved as much as I wanted. And her personality is meant for TV anyway, so I was just happy to see her, get an outlet to do that kind of thing. Can you guys hold on 1 minute? I have to plug in my computer because
yeah, of course, yeah, no problem.
You're getting 2020. I mean, renew your antivirus while you're at it.
Good idea. I'm gonna be right back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
So, are we talking to Steve Stevens? Because he's kind of awesome. Are you noticing that? Look at that rack, dude.
I know.
Yeah, I know. Now we finally get to see it for anyone watching the video.
Yeah. Can you talk to us about his rack?
Can talk to you about mine.
I was going to say talk dirty to me, but then I didn't really mean it that way. I'm engaged, Siobhán. Like, Jesus, are you trying to get me? She's going to listen to the show. She's going to be like, you had Siobhán talk about a rack on the radio. Go on.
Maybe you guys can talk about his rack because you know more about all this techie stuff than I do.
What's funny enough, I'm in the
there's an Avalon in there.
Yeah, I'm in the view where I'm seeing only whoever's talking, so
I see the old school line 6.
You got to change your view, Cory.
He's got like a pod. Oh man, I'm judging him. We were judging you by your rack.
Oh, we need to wait for him to plug his
All
headphones.
right, I'm back. Sorry about that.
We were judging you. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben.
We were judging you by your rack, and then Siobhán wanted to talk about her rack, and then I was like, I just got engaged, so like it's not going to be good if she talks about her rack. But
I
like,
had
we were
no
talking
intention.
about
I was just joking.
we were talking about your rack. Do you use all that stuff?
Some of it, yeah. This was put together. This gear was put together quite a while ago, and now you could do a lot of this stuff in the box anyway. But I use a lot of it. I try and I'm good. I do guitar-based music, so as much analog gear as I can use to warm up my tracks and stuff, and not have it as digital sounding as possible. So yeah, I use most of it.
So we've talked a lot, not to change gears again, but we've talked a lot about some of the other people you've worked with. I see here that you're working on a solo project right now. You have a bunch of other things that you're working on this year. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? Like, what are some of the current projects that are, taking your time these days?
Yeah, I've done a number of solo records. And I thought the time would be right to maybe do something with guest vocalists for each track, and also, it'll afford me the ability to do different things stylistically, not just do rock tracks or whatever. And there's quite a number of singers. I'm so gifted that I've worked with so many great singers. And there's a lot. I mean, that's the one thing, is a lot of good singers out now. And some of which I'd really love to work with. So, not unlike, the basic concept of what Carlos Santana did with his Supernatural. Obviously, I won't do a pop record like that, but I'd love to bring in different people to work with, maybe different producers, people that can kind of take what I do on the guitar.
I challenge you to do a pop record, because I'll tell you right now, your writing and your sense of melody would be perfect. Because you know what? There's all these guys out there like, Red One and Max Martin, but like those guys are geniuses. They're over
Absolutely.
there. They're like, was it Sweden or whatever?
Yeah.
They're like, they train everyone from a young age to learn music and all that sort of stuff. And I would say, you know what? I would totally love to hear Steve Stevens do something, with your acoustic work or something like that, and do something with like, a very unique, and have to live in that pop box, because guess what? I bet you would make every moment of it interesting, whether you're making your guitar sound like keyboards, whatever. So like, you wrote that off really quickly, but like, that actually, don't take the low-hanging fruit, man. Check out the video, like, make a remix, have all those guys at the clubs while you're up at your house changing your salt shakers and like doing your lawn, like have the girls dancing to your song.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I hear a lot of that stuff from, my wife listens to a lot of current stuff, but, I love a great, man, it is not easy to craft a great pop song.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say
with
that.
Billy Idol, man, we've had a lot of like success with what I would call pop songs, and, rock and roll pop. And I don't dispel any of that stuff as long as I get to be myself. I don't want to try and be something I'm not.
We've talked about this on previous podcasts, but what it comes down to is a good song is a good song.
Yes.
If you took you went back and changed all the instrumentation to Rebel Yell to like some like synths and EDM drums, it would probably chart right now. It's a great song, so that's what it comes down to.
By the way, 2020 Bass Nectar remix of Billy Idol with Steve Stevens. You heard it here first.
Well,
MTV.
I mean, we were on board with doing remixes way back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. We always did extended remixes and stuff, and I think it was us and Def Leppard were the only two rock oriented groups that were doing that. And that came a lot from our producer who came from, doing Donna Summer's records and things. And we understood, this stuff could be played in clubs. It didn't just have to be played on radio. So,
Yeah, good song is a good song. It translates,
absolutely.
And anywhere, it's all comes down, the vocals, the melody, and everything else is, just the canvas that you're putting it on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So not to change gears, Siobhán, but I'm going to change gears because I actually want to see Steve's reaction to this, because there's a person that I'm wondering, because we've been talking about great singers, and you both have worked with a lot of incredible singers. Like, I want to hear about Vince Neil, by the way, and Billy Idol. But before we get to that, Siobhán worked with Michael Bublé. What was that like?
Michael Bublé, super, super nice guy, really down to earth. And I would say across the board, like we've talked about before.
Can you say something bad about Canada, or is it just not true?
No, I mean, he's just like, honestly, I feel like I was going to say across the board, a lot of them, like the highest level people that I've worked with are all really, really authentic. Yeah. You know, they let you know who they are right away. They're very appreciative for what you do.
Well, that's because David Foster walked in and said, I'm going to make you.
Yeah, well, yeah. But yeah, he's just a really
I worked with Whitney.
Guy.
I can make you, Siobhán.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these people, he was someone that was doing his thing and then made it really big. And I think he, didn't forget where he came from and is very appreciative of all the experiences he has.
So did you eat poutine? Was that on his rider in the back?
No, of course we had some sort of crazy catering, and it had whatever. I don't even remember.
So how about you, Steve? You obviously have worked with people like that, of that level, like a guy like Vince Neil. Like, you gotta say, like, when that guy walks into a room, you're like, holy shit, that's fucking Vince Neil. Right. Whether you love him or hate him, just like Sebastian Bach. Could you tell us what your experience has been like working with a guy, who is across the board in so many ways?
Well, it was, being a New Yorker, it was a bit of culture shock when I kind of came out to work with Vince, because he's such the LA. He's, I didn't. None of my friends ever said, "Dude,"
Right? Yeah. Different world.
Oh, dude, man. What was cool was the, again, the producer on the record I did with him was a guy named Ron Nevison, who did all the Heart records, those big, huge records, and had worked on Quadrophenia with the Who, and
no big deal.
No big deal. And I was used to, so I come from the Billy Idol thing where maybe a guitar solo is 8 bars at the most, Keep it concise, keep, just a little touch of guitar, in a solo or whatever. And with Vince, we're in the studio and I do, 16 bar guitar solo. Double it, make it longer, play faster, play. Do you
like the high notes?
Yeah. He liked them all, man. It was just like I was suddenly given carte blanche to play as much guitar as I wanted, with no restraints, and it would.
He's thinking David Lee Roth's got Steve Vai and Jason Becker. I got this fucking Steve Stevens guy. We should probably get him paid by the note.
Well, the thing was, he was coming off the success of Dr. Feelgood, so we, album-wise, we had big shoes to fill. And the album turned out really good. I enjoyed doing it, but man, it was right when Nirvana hit, and we went from the record company loving us to asking if we owned flannel shirts.
Wow!
Oh my God!
And I said, "You signed Vince Neil. Are you not aware of Motley Crue, of what And it was like they dropped the record. They just couldn't be bothered. It was just
wow.
And the tour was great when we supported Van Halen, because we played to 20,000 people a night, and we on that tour it didn't matter what was popular on radio or what was happening on MTV or whatever, or the grunge thing. But as soon as that ended, we couldn't get arrested, and the same thing happened for a lot of those bands. Motley went through the same thing with the album they did, and the writing was on the wall for a lot of the kind of heavy rock bands.
Wow. So that you would attribute that mostly to the labels, because I, at least from my experience in the band that I'm in, I'm always hearing arguments
tell
between.
Tell them about your band. So this is the last band we should ask, because Dustin's a very big personality, and I didn't know who Dustin was, so I'm guessing Steve may not have heard of Starset. Have you heard of Starset, Steve?
It's a sort of a cinematic active rock, probably totally different style, but it's
how many streams do you have, Siobhán?
How many strings do I have?
Streams.
Streams. 2 billion. We just
she was in Forbes magazine. That's what I'm saying. I'm waking up and I'm like, wait, 2 billion in? What was the show you were just on, Siobhán?
What? Wait, which show?
You played a show on television. There's
the Queen's Gambit on the
the number
Netflix.
one television show on television. She plays the violin in that show. So
that series is awesome. I love it.
She plays the violin.
Awesome.
Now he's
I
heard
loved it.
you. Now he knows who you are.
Oh, absolutely. That show is awesome.
Amazing
yeah, it
music
turned out
in
to
that
be
show.
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for plugging me, even though it's not about me. But no,
it isn't. But I want him to
That's
be
cool,
aware
though.
because none of us are current. Because he said current music like his wife, which I'm not current either. So I just thought maybe when he's listening to you, he'll have more understanding that you actually know what you're talking about when you have 2 billion streams in Forbes and that you're on the show that we all watched on Netflix.
Yeah,
That's
no,
awesome.
well, I appreciate you highlighting that. But what I was going to say, is that I'm hanging out in the dressing room all the time, and all the big shows, the labels come and they send their people whenever it's a cool city to hang out in, right? But it's interesting how much argument. I don't want to say argumentation, but it's got to be really difficult, especially for the front people or people involved in the writing process, having to convince labels of this is what we're going for, and because you have totally two completely different sides. You've got the musicians and the creators, and then you've got the suits. And that's something that a lot of people forget about is that there's often a clash that goes on between trying to convince the label that, don't try to change us.
Especially
don't
trying to
tell us
innovate.
fit in this. If you're trying to be innovative, it can be really, really hard because a lot of times you've got someone that's sort of a visionary and then you've got the people in the suits that want to go with whatever the current trend is and they want to push you in a certain direction.
Right.
So it's interesting that you brought that up.
It used to be that the guys at the labels were not but they were musicians to start with, and producers, and you could call up your A&R guy, A&R. I mean, perfect example is, originally when I signed to Warner's, Ted Teppelman's the head of A&R, and he's making Montrose Records and Van Halen and Doobie Brothers. If I got a problem in the studio, I call him up and I go, man, I can't figure out how to get this bridge happening. All right, I'll be right down there. The guy's been there, knows
Right.
it. He didn't go to law school and business school and looking at the monthly readouts or whatever. So it was very different, and I think it was also that the artists were responsible for their own music, and I think now the game is that the label puts the artists with writers, and a lot of times what you end up hearing is a product. Of the artist is not necessarily telling their own story. I don't think those kind of people last as long because the real artists have their own thing to tell. But there's a lot of and also, it used to be that the label would give you a couple of albums to find your way or create.
Give you a chance, Steve. Like if you whiff it once,
they would develop
Or
artists.
develop an audience.
they
Right,
put
exactly.
actual money into you and say, you know what? If he doesn't do it, you didn't get the 6 weeks on radio, and then if you flopped, they just kicked you right out on the curb. Bye.
you got
Glad
one
you dropped out of college.
Right now, you got one shot at it, and it's but at the same time, with the internet, you can take that power back, but you don't, and you don't have to rely on a label.
Through Cameo. You can call Cameo and we can get you. You can actually hire Steve Stevens right now and have him call you, or even have him call your friend and say that he's late to work, or that maybe someone needs a reminder that that they're the Iceman in their life. You know what I mean? And that they're going down. You know what I mean? And if you need that, because I need that. I feel like I need that. I need to put the plug. And you can go to stevestevensguitar.com because I'm pretty sure that everything Steve Stevens. But can I ask you, why is it just not Steve Stevens? Who the hell is stevestevens.com?
Some bastard out there has it.
Are they not even using it? They're just holding you hostage? That
Probably.
motherfucker.
Squatters.
Yeah, it's a squatter. It's a web
As if they
squatter.
don't know. It's like stevestevensredundant.com.
Yeah,
Gosh.
somebody's got it.
Yeah, but you're right. Now going back to that, I mean, now anyone can kind of self-produce an album and release it on the internet. So it's probably even more important than ever to have something to say. And when we have talked to industry people, on our podcast and elsewhere, that's something that a lot of them mention as being important to them when they signed an artist or found an artist that made them want to invest in them. Is that it's not just, is the product perfect? It's, do you have something to say? What's different? What's, edgy? What's innovative? And it's,
Agreed.
even harder with such a saturated market now. You really have to say something.
Very true.
Siobhán, I think this is the most excited I've seen you ever. Like, are you like amped up? Did you drink half a bottle of vino before you got on this?
No, I didn't. No, but I've been watching like interviews with
You're all hopped
Steve.
up. Steve, you don't understand. Like, she's usually like mousy, like, hi, it's nice to see. She's like all like,
No,
let me
I
tell
don't
you the
believe
next
that
question.
for a minute. I do not believe that.
No, not with
well,
her fingers. If you hear her play, she's formidable. I mean, you've heard her play if you've watched The Queen's Gambit. And
What he
she's
means to say
phenomenal.
is that normally either of us can't get a word in over
No,
Ben.
exactly.
So
The truth there is, Ben, you're normally dominating the conversation. You're oddly demure tonight, so that's why I'm
Demure,
taking
that's a
control.
good one. Demure.
isolating our audience again.
No, but I got excited about this because like one of the things that made me so
eloquent.
interested in you and watching, a lot of the interviews that I've found online is that, I relate a lot to your versatility because I'm, like I've mentioned, I'm someone that came from the classical music world and I've been thrown into rock music and into pop music and being outside of my comfort zone. And I just loved when I heard, that you had all these different styles that you kind of incorporated into the stuff you do. And that to me got
It's like
me
an
excited.
amalgamation of a buffet of different
And
genres.
I think that's something that needs to be truly highlighted, especially for people that are listening, is that, there isn't necessarily one path. And it's so important to have that liberates you to be able to feel bold in taking on things that, like you said, saying it's okay to say, I don't know. If you have that background of being versatile and having different experiences, I feel like that opens up your mind to have the skill to be able to approach things that might feel slightly uncomfortable.
True. And when you look at, I mean, to me, arranging how no matter what genre or what style you're doing musically, arranging, whether it's 3 instruments, 10 instruments, arranging them is really important. It's really key. I get bored very easily when I hear a song where the bass and the guitar are going the same way. Da, 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 da. And Led Zeppelin when you think about Led Zeppelin, there was only 3 instruments other than Robert Plant. But the parts were arranged so brilliantly that they're intertwined and they meet. It's almost like looking at a great old Swiss watch where you have these gears and some of them move very fast and some are bigger and move slowly, but they all work together. And that's about arranging. And classical music is the best way to learn about arranging because every section and everything is all intertwined. And to me, that listening, I mean, my dad loved classical music and I never looked at classical like, I don't get, I don't know, for some reason, I always got it, I always kind of like saw, and I think the great guitar players, the truly great ones, are very good arrangers at arranging their guitar. And a lot of them you'll find, even Hendrix, I've read probably about a dozen Hendrix biographies. He loved classical music. He was a big fan of a lot of classical music and applied it to the arrangements of the band. And I listen to a lot of film soundtracks, and I find that it really enhances what I do in rock and roll. If I just listen to my contemporaries, it does me, it just doesn't. I can't apply it in any way.
Right. Well, that's what makes you an out-of-the-box thinker, of course. And I totally, I mean, classical music is 100% of any arranging that I do. You're right. The counterpoint, the fact that voices move in opposition of one another and meet, that's totally where that texture comes from.
Do you not remember when I called you earlier, Steven, and this might be oversharing. So, I decided this year, I was like, I'll take some shrooms to, see if I feel good again or whatever, because you're supposed to, reduce anxiety or whatever. First off, it doesn't do. They do eventually. But not when you're on them. So, but one epiphany, I called Siobhán. I was like, oh, wait a minute. So basically what I've learned is that classical music is like playing someone's specific style. And you're forcing people later to play exactly what Chopin wanted or exactly what Mozart wanted. And they tell you what the F and the PPP, and then the little notations. You have to do the little things all the time. And that's all it is. It's just basically playing exactly these incredible parts, because I was listening to Franz Liszt radio. If you haven't heard Finale from Franz Liszt, it basically is the giant mega mix of all classical music in my mind, because it's progressive classical music, all done on the piano. It sounds like 17 people playing piano simultaneously. And I just called Siobhán and I said, basically, you don't even have to have a style or technique, it seems, if you're actually studious in classical music. You're just literally like a drum machine. I don't know. Siobhán, is that accurate, or am I just totally simplifying all of classical music?
Well, there is a culture in classical music performance of being very purist in terms of doing what's true to the style. But, just like anything, no matter whether it's classical, rock and roll, punk, I mean, you have to think about what was going on in that time. Classical music, this stuff was dance music. They played it at parties. So, I think some of the best performers, even when it comes to very, like, what you would consider like stringent, square classical music, the best performers of it are the ones that are most liberated in understanding this is party music, this is dance music, this is how it was done at the time, and if you put yourself in the context of what it was used for, that it's not just a study and it's not just, do PPP and FFF, it's...
Is this part of the Leonard Bernstein Harvard speech you're talking about? Does he tell people you need to be like at a party music when you play classical?
No, that's just what you learn. I mean, if you have to be authentic when you're playing, so if you're too in the box and too square, it's just not as effective of a performance. But anyway, I digress.
So kind of along those lines. So Steve, you've been playing some of these Billy Idol songs for a long time. Do you adapt them over time and bring in any new elements? And as a musical director, do you go to the band and say, what are we going to do to keep this fresh?
Well, what's great is there was a number of things that that songs from the 80s that we couldn't really recreate on stage, especially the songs from Whiplash Smile, because technology was not there. We weren't you couldn't use sequences and things like that. That technology didn't exist. So now, because we've been doing a lot of these Vegas residencies where you're there in one venue for 3 days out of the week, and a lot of times people will come in and they'll watch all 3 shows. So we dig back in the back catalog and we reinterpret a lot of this stuff and use the technology that we can now, and also we do, there's a song on Whiplash Smile called Don't Need a Gun, and we've done it with flamenco guitar for the last 15 years. Yeah. Just what happened was, one of the great things that Billy and I did when we got back together was we did Storytellers, and we did it
awesome. Yeah. I totally love that.
And we even had like a Spanish flamenco percussionist with us, and we reinterpret a lot of stuff acoustically because the songs work that way, and it allowed us to kind of like look at the catalog again and do it in a new way, but still, present the song. Hopefully, it didn't lose its integrity or anything, right. And so. We being on stage with that guy, nothing is scripted, so. You got to be on your toes because he's going to do something different every night in every song.
That's great.
I just spend my time because I know the guitar parts by now, and I'm just looking at him and going, he's out of his fucking mind. But how brilliant! That's exactly what I want Billy Idol to be. He's not this one thing. He's not this. I've seen bands that kind of go through the motions and they kind of play the hits and they seem like they're a little bored of that. And I can tell you, man, it's not the case with Billy. He's the real deal, man. He's still passionate about it.
Does he have blood from Kiss in his freezer?
From Kiss?
Remember, like Sebastian Bach?
Oh.
I'm saying, does he have that enthusiasm? Because the thing is that I love that about Sebastian Bach. And when first off, Billy Idol, so we haven't really dove into this. Can you humanize him for us a little bit? Because when I see him, I think of his snarl, I think of perfect hair, I think he has I should do my laundry on his 6-pack, and he's got he's like rock and roll, and his songs are all badass, and you're doing pinch harmonics and 80s pop rock songs and just killing it, and I love that. Yeah. But who is this guy? You said that Billy can't be bothered with this, so we know what Billy can't be bothered with. What is Billy bothered with?
Well, the guy knows more about American history than any American I know. And
really?
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and I found this with Ozzy as well. I got to know Ozzy a little bit. And
so wait, Ozzy, and does Ozzy ever call Billy Idol, sit down and they're like, dude, did you know this in Nuremberg that they actually did it this way?
I bet you they do. I bet you they do.
Oh my God.
I mean, History Channel is like that. And Idol has all these books. There's always a new book about a battle of somewhere or something about American history, and I think because in England the TV, post Second World War, England really even though they came through the wars as victors, the place was decimated and people had no money and they were on the dole, and they looked at American TV as this shining thing and loved cowboys and Indians. And Billy's favorite actor is John Wayne, and it's like, wow. He loves American Westerns and all this kind of stuff. So this, history buff, and also, he's an incredibly intelligent guy. I will say a lot of the English guys that I've worked with, I don't know, something about their school system. They actually studied shit.
Yeah. My mom's grew up there, and she goes on about this all the time.
There's something,
totally.
They actually paid attention, whereas us Americans.
But the accent also boosts their intelligence 10%.
It sounds better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I trust a guy with an English accent a lot more. Well, does he throw in like witty quips though? Like if he's in like Mississippi, like just so you know, during the battle, blah 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 blah, in 1873, like
absolutely,
he does.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me so excited. So like, are you excited every night? Like when he throws in stuff, you're like, what crazy historical thing is he going to throw in about Tallahassee tonight?
Well, he'll change lyrics to what's a great one? The song to be a lover.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Second
Classic.
line is he always sings forgot to wear rubber.
Excuse me while I kiss this guy.
Yeah. So you kind of like, and he'll come up with different. I mean, it's great because nothing is scripted, man. We have a blast on stage. We really do. I know it's a job. I know it's.
But what's it like on stage when you guys start? Like, what's the environment? Like, you guys put on a show? Is it just a band on stage? Like, what goes on? Like, because I know you said that you're not the guy that chases Michael Jackson around, and we've established that.
Yeah,
but one thing that Dave Grohl said in the Foo Fighters thing that they did, which I thought was fantastic, was we went from playing a set to doing a show. Mm-hmm. Are you a show? And if so, where are you a show versus being a band?
Yeah, I mean, we rely on stuff that's pertinent to the music that doesn't take away from it. There's rear screen projections. There's one song, and it was off the last record called "Ghosts in My Guitar." And Billy's dad passed away, and the story that he told me, his dad passed away while listening to this song. So we have images of his dad while we play this song, and he tells the whole story about his dad hated his music his whole life. So, and then finally accepts it.
So you got to pull on my heartstrings right now, because now I'm already like, dude, please send our love to Billy, dude.
So here's what happened, right? He and I decided to do a 2-man show, and we booked a tour, and it was just the two of us on stage as a kind of duo to do it stripped down. This is right around the time his autobiography came out. So he's telling stories. It's an opportunity to tell the stories behind the songs and things that influence. And we got to this song, and I had no idea he's going to talk about his dad passing away. And I'm sitting there, and I'm getting choked up. I go, you bastard.
Wow.
You could have given me a heads up. Because I'm like, then I got to start the intro to the song, and my hands are shaking. I'm
right, yeah.
like,
oh
dude,
gosh.
I wasn't, so here we have a no pyro rule. We don't do pyro. We did it.
Metallica has taught us something.
Is there a story behind that?
There must be a story here. Okay.
Now, I like Nickleback. I think they make great records. I have nothing against them. But we did an outdoor show, and Nickleback went on. It was us, Stone Temple Pilots, and Nickleback. Nickleback went on in the middle of the afternoon. Sunny California days, 90 degrees out, and they've got the pyro going off, and it's like,
oh my gosh.
Are they using pyro in the middle of the afternoon? People are like sun tanning. And Billy says, we're never going to use pyro. It's not for us.
You don't need it.
Yeah. Well, whenever we sit down with our lighting designer or whatever, I always say, man, the best special effect we have is the chemistry between these two guys. I mean, you got to see the Stones. It's Mick and Keith. It's like, you don't really care about the lights and stuff. You just want those two guys to acknowledge, and play that music, and the fact that they're still doing it,
Well, I mean, the question is, though, does anyone else on this podcast know who Bill Wyman is? Not you, Steve. Do you know who Bill Wyman is, Cory?
Bass player for the Stones.
Yay!
We're joking
around.
I was trying to figure out if that was a trick question or not.
I was joking around the other day because we're saying like, does people know who Larry Mullen Jr. Because there's not many bass players that like you stick out like Steve Harris, Les Claypool, but it's like even the guy from the Stones. You're just talking about Mick and Keith. Like, does Ronnie Wood, is he the chopped liver? Is Charlie Watts chopped liver? But like kinda, because there's Steve Stevens and Billy Idol.
I mean, there's always that thing. I mean, the guys who write the songs and
Well, Dick Wagner was not Alice Cooper singing "Only Women Bleed."
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's always that singer and guitar player next to. I mean, it just goes way back to like I said, Elvis or it's just I think people like that. The guy's got a sidekick. It's whatever.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
Lone Ranger and Tonto. It's
Well, it's the chemistry too. Great songs and great chemistry. I think will always be the ultimate.
SpongeBob and Squidward.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
Right.
I know. I can't wait to hear the stuff you guys are working on now.
It doesn't suck. It's pretty good.
It doesn't
man.
suck. That's a great. It's a great review.
Great bar to set.
The least worst of Steve Stevens and Billy Idol.
Well, yeah, we're coming up on the end of our second hour here. So, Steve, that was amazing.
I just want to tell all of my friends that you should hire Steve to send me messages on Cameo.
Yeah,
because
check
if
out
he doesn't
Steve.
get any, he'll know that
All
he
three
shouldn't
of
come
us,
back on
yeah.
this podcast because he'll be like, no one even called me from that shit. They call his manager like, what the fuck? I thought I was going to be heckling Benny all week. Now we need to get Scott to hire him like all week, just so you know. Hint, guys.
Make sure you guys check out SteveStevensGuitar.com. Brand new website up there. Check out Steve on Cameo. Get a nice message.
He has a new solo record coming out.
Eventually, I'm not this year, but before that, there'll be new Billy Idol stuff out.
Yeah, which
The
obviously
EP.
we can't
Now,
wait for.
Quick question about that. So, are you a guy now about just songs? Because I feel like the old school album where people listen from start to finish is almost like a dinosaur idea. Do you feel like you do an EP in the sense that like you don't want to blow your load on 12 songs because nobody listens to 12 songs? There's 2 singles and they move on.
Here's my thought. When albums were vinyl, they were 40 minutes, and you geared your record towards.
Not if you're Todd Rundgren, he'd go 52 minutes and fuck you. And it sounded like shit.
Exactly. That's right. You're exactly right. And I think records got too long. I couldn't last my way through a 12-song record. 9 songs, all those Van Halen classic records, like 35, 40 minutes. And I think that in my mind, I guess from my experience, that's what records were. I think records got too long. So, an album, 10 songs, I think that's great. But I believe that the next Idol stuff will be an EP.
Well, if it makes you feel better, our first record was 9 songs, our second record's 8 songs, and now the third record's going to be 7 songs.
Yeah, but our songs are.
Except they're all like 15 minutes long.
Yeah, but
so
we're
shut
going
up.
with the yes thing. We're doing the progressive thing where every song gets more grandiose. So
I
we'll
got
be
no
like
problem
Tool.
with that. I got no problem with that.
Well, the stuff you guys did with Black Light Syndrome, your songs were 10 minutes long, but they're fucking awesome. And then Terry Bozzio's playing on 4 fucking kick drums simultaneously.
Exactly.
Like, what are you complaining about, assholes?
True.
Steve, I gotta say thank you so much for coming on. Like, it's just, I'm not, if you didn't notice, not normally nervous, but I wrote pages of notes.
I mean, here's like my notebook. I've got all of my notes.
No, because
from
I didn't even know how to
days.
organize my thoughts. Because there were so many things I wanted to ask you, because most of these people have to pretend that I really like them. And in your case, I really like you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's been a pleasure.
No, thank you. Yeah,
We
I mean,
appreciate
so
your time.
interesting. Such a amazing stories.
Do me a favor, and when you email with my manager, send him some links so I can listen to your music.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to
We're
check
everywhere. We're
in with him once we're done
ubiquitous.
today, so.
We're 2020-d.com. Apple Music, Spotify. We're everywhere. We're going to be like Motley Crue spreading their music in the 80s everywhere.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Thank you
All
so
right, well,
much.
thank you so much.
Okay.
Once again.
And ladies and
Thank you.
gentlemen, listen to Steve Stevens. Check him out. Stay tuned with Billy Idol, apparently coming out with the EP soon. And we have to bug him for the solo record. Go on to SteveStevens.com. guitar.com, and have obviously calm about Cameo, and Top Gun is being remade, so I guess they're using your songs again. Good luck for getting more credit on that. I want the Ferrari named Iceman.
All right.